What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wencl, and today I am bringing you 4 bold predictions ahead of Week 8 of the NFL season. Now, keep in mind, these are bold predictions, things that are very unlikely to happen, but they're not impossible. If they hit, awesome, but if they don't, it was expected that they weren't going to. These aren't outside of the world of possibilities, though. Before we dive on into those bold predictions, though, if you're juggling a multitude of leagues and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros will help you simplify things. With My Playbook's multi-league assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all of your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in, let us help you dominate all of your leagues with the multi-league assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the My Playbook app. Alrighty, y'all, let's get into it. Here we go. 4 bold predictions for Week 8 of the NFL season, starting with bold prediction number 1. J.K. Dobbins will finish as a top 3 running back against the New Orleans Saints this week. I am running it back. I had J.K. Dobbins as a bold prediction last week, finishing as a top 3 back against the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, a very underwhelming performance on Monday Night Football, but the Cardinals, admittedly, they've been buckling down on running backs over the last 3 weeks. We saw Jordan Mason in Week 5. He only totaled 8.8 fantasy points, finished as the running back 32 on the week. Josh Jacobs in Week 6 had 18 attempts for 62 yards, and then obviously in Week 7 we saw J.K. Dobbins with 14 attempts for only 40 yards. But the big kicker here with the Arizona Cardinals is that they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown during that span either. The Saints, on the flip side, though, they have been getting absolutely bulldozed in the run game. Week 5, it was Kareem Hunt, 27 for 102 yards and a score, the running back 5 on the week. Week 6, you had Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. Bucky Irving was the running back 12. Sean Tucker was the overall running back 1 on the week. And then Javonte Williams on Thursday Night Football this last week, 14 for 88 and 2 scores, the running back 5 on the week. I don't see Justin Herbert throwing the ball another 35 plus times in this game. He's had 34 and 39 attempts in each of his last 2 games, especially when it's Spencer Rattler leading the Saints offense still. They are struggling to produce points. They are struggling to produce yardage. I think the Chargers should be able to keep the ball on the ground in this game. And you look at the running back splits in this backfield too. Like, Kamani Vidal started to get more playing time, but I'm really not concerned about him siphoning touches from Dobbins. In terms of snaps, it was 45-18 in favor of Dobbins this last week. 17 touches to Kamani Vidal's 4 for Dobbins as well. And Vidal hasn't been any better than J.K. Dobbins recently. Against the Cardinals, he only averaged 3.3 yards per carry. He's only been averaging 3 yards per tote in his last 2 games as well. So I'm not going to be scared off by an underwhelming performance from J.K. Dobbins on Monday Night Football here. I think he can get right against a very, very bad Saints run defense that has been exposed. I mean, we even saw Saquon Barkley earlier this season go for 147 and 2 scores against them, right? I think top 3 is totally within the world of possibilities for J.K. Dobbins this week, and that is my first bold prediction that he will finish top 3 against the New Orleans Saints this week. Bold prediction number 2 here. Now we're going to flip the script, maybe get a little bit more negative here. Typically, I do that with my second bold prediction. But Marvin Harrison Jr., how about this? Finishes outside of the top 60 wide receivers this week against the Miami Dolphins. Now, that one may sound a little bit reckless upon first hearing it, but if you remove Week 6, where Marv left early with a concussion, he's finished outside of the top 50 wide receivers just as many times as he's finished inside of the top 30. He has 3 finishes outside of the top 50 and 3 finishes inside of the top 30. The connection between Marv and Kyler has also been struggling thus far. And the matchup against the Dolphins is pretty tough this week. Miami has allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers this year. Only 4 wide receivers have topped 10 fantasy points against the Dolphins this year, and they have only given up 2 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this year. The way you beat the Dolphins this year is on the ground, where they are being run on at the 2nd highest rate this year and giving up 4.6 yards per carry. So Marv could score, have a quintessential 1 yard, 1 catch, 1 touchdown kind of performance from Mike Evans, right? Marv could have that kind of a day and, sneak his way into the top 40, 50 wide receivers. But the point I'm trying to make here is that my optimism for Marv this week is very, very low. I don't think he bounces back this week against the Dolphins. I could easily see James Conner getting 20 plus rush attempts in this game to keep the ball out of Tua's hands, assuming he does make his return here in week 8. So it's a tough matchup for Marv. I think the Cardinals keep the ball on the ground in this game. And my bold prediction, once again, is that Marvin Harrison Jr. finishes outside of the top 60 wide receivers this week. Bold prediction number 3, let's keep it moving here. This one is one of my favorites this week. Brock Bowers to score 25 plus fantasy points against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. This would be his highest fantasy output of the season. He did have 23 points at one point earlier in the year, but Bowers is clearly the only thing going right for the Las Vegas Raiders passing attack right now. He has drawn 10 plus targets in each of his last 3 games. He has at least 70 receiving yards in those games, in 2 of which he had 90 plus receiving yards. The kicker with Brock Bowers, though, is that he's only caught 1 touchdown this season. And the Chiefs, now they have actually been one of the best matchups to target for tight ends this year. They are allowing 17.5 fantasy points per game to the position. That is the most this year. They've given up 501 yards, which is the second most to tight ends. And tight ends, they have racked up the 3rd most targets and the 3rd most receptions against the Chiefs defense. Now, the Raiders are going to want to run the ball because they have this deep, unshakable conviction that one of these weeks it's going to work and we can just run all over a defense. But the problem is Kansas City has been run on at the 7th lowest rate this year. They've given up the 4th fewest rushing yards per game, and they're only allowing 3.8 yards per carry this year. That is the 3rd fewest in the entire league. So I think Gardner Minshew, assuming Aiden O'Connell is still going to be out in this game, is going to have to stand in the pocket. He's going to have to sling it to Brock Bowers because it could be Jacoby Myers, but Brock Bowers has been getting the volume. He's going to be their only chance of staying in this game if Brock Bowers truly goes off. So the matchup is there. I love the match for Brock Bowers. The volume is there for Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers has already put up 23 points already. So I think this is where we get the monster week from him, where he solidifies himself into that upper echelon of elite tight ends that, put up 30 plus fantasy points. I think he goes for at least 25 in this game. And that is bold prediction number 3. Bold prediction number 4, Javonte Williams finishes as the overall running back 1 this week against the Carolina Panthers. I feel gross saying it out loud, all right? But this Panthers defense right now might be even more gross. This defense can't stop a nosebleed right now. They have given up the most fantasy points per game to running backs this year, the most rushing yards allowed to running backs, and they have allowed 13 rushing touchdowns to the position. That is 4 more than any other team in the NFL. This Panthers run defense is putrid. Javonte Williams also coming off of his best game of the year against the Saints. 14 attempts for 88 yards, 2 scores, 26.1 fantasy points, the running back 5 in week 7. And Javonte is still dominating touches and snaps in this running back room as well. We thought Jaleel McLaughlin, maybe Aldrick Esme was going to get filtered in, but in week 7, it was more of the same from week 6. Javonte had 41 snaps to McLaughlin's 14 and Estime's 6. Week 7 touches, Javonte had 17 to McLaughlin's 4 and Aldrick Estime's 5. Sean Payton knows Bo Nix isn't going to go out and win you a football game. So why put it into his hands when you're playing against the worst run defense in the entire NFL? Sean Payton is still a smart guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Javonte Williams get 20 plus touches in this game, and find the end zone multiple times again. If there's one player who I think is like the dark horse for the overall running back 1 this week, I do think it's Javonte Williams after the output we saw against the New Orleans Saints on Thursday Night Football. So Javonte Williams, final bold prediction, the overall running back 1 against the Carolina Panthers this week. That's all I've got for you all. 4 bold predictions for week 8 of the NFL season. But before we sign off here, remember, if you're juggling a multitude of fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, FantasyPros will help you simplify things. With My Playbook's multi-league assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all of your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in. Let us help you dominate all of your leagues with the multi-league assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the My Playbook app.